The affair of the unfaithful wife is exposed. DNA testing reveals the betrayal. A legal victory is achieved in court. As I walk towards my sister's car, the gate clicks shut. I stop and take a deep breath. The air feels like it's on the other side of a wall, but somehow it seems fresher and sweeter. Marcy embraces me and asks, "Is there anything in particular you want to do or go before we go home?" I replied that I would actually love a cold beer, and she suggested the cigarette bar, which I agreed to. Of course, as we drove away from the gray stone walls, memories of what had led me here came flooding back, a messy divorce that seemed unimaginable on that beautiful day in July when Amy walked towards me, accompanied by her father. Amy and I had been a couple since the second grade, and everyone was convinced we would eventually get married. We were inseparable, and our relationship was as romantic as a fairy tale, destined to have a happy ending. We decided to postpone getting married until after college, and agreed to wait until we were 30 to start a family. We wanted to explore and experience life before settling down. However, our relationship was not without its ups and downs. We broke up twice, once in the 11th grade and again in our second year of college. Amy felt she needed to see what other men were like. Our high school breakup only lasted 3 weeks, and when Amy came back, she admitted her mistake, saying she had acted foolishly. Meanwhile, I had dated 5 girls, but none of them compared to Amy. I never considered dating other girls outside of class or sports. Both breakups hurt, but when Amy broke up with me again in college, I decided to see what else I could find. I soon discovered that many girls don't wait until marriage like Amy did. Within just 5 weeks, Bev Holbrook was my first. Nancy Newbert introduced me to new experiences, and Helen Collins showed me different aspects of intimacy. Pauline, the French teacher, taught me how to achieve mutual pleasure, but I couldn't get the idea out of my head that Amy might be exploring a similar experience. I know it's a double standard, but I still wanted to share these first times with her. About 6 weeks after Amy decided to date other guys, I came home from class and found her on our front porch steps. It made me feel like high school all over again. I had been with Amy and had the best of everything, and I didn't realize it. I asked her for forgiveness. So forgiving her was a natural thing to do. We never discussed the breakup, and when I tried to get physical with her, she said she wanted to wait until we were married, which I respected. I wasn't surprised to learn that she wasn't a virgin on her wedding night. I have a feeling she knew I wasn't her first. We both found good jobs in our respective fields, and the next 4 years went well. I travel occasionally, but never for more than 3 days at a time. Amy told me she was pregnant the day after her 26th birthday, which caught me off guard because we had planned to wait until we were 30 to start a family. She explained that the medication she had been taking for a cold had affected the effectiveness of the contraceptive pill. 9 months later, we welcomed Brian Lewis into the world. Amy returned to work after only 6 weeks, and as her workplace had a nursery, she soon expressed a desire to have another child, hoping that the two would be close in age and easier to raise. I had no problem with that, so I had no problem when she told me she was pregnant again after 6 weeks. When she was 8 months pregnant, she mentioned that 2 children were enough and asked if I minded if she got sterilized. I felt that if she didn't want to go through another pregnancy, it was her decision, so who was I to object? A month later, Susan Marie joined our family, just like Bree. Amy returned with 2 children after only 6 weeks of maternity leave. Over the next 6 years, we each got 2 promotions, our income was stable, we were the ideal couple, rarely arguing, with an active sex life, getting intimate 3 times a week. I thought that was pretty good, because compared to other couples with children who had been married as long as we had similar hobbies, liked spending time together, and looked forward to seeing each other every day after work. However, our happy family life was shattered one day in July. I flew to Denver for a 3-day business trip to resolve a supplier delivery issue. Upon arrival, I discovered that the IRS had seized the company earlier that day for non-payment of payroll taxes. The company had been struggling financially for some time. I quickly returned to the airport and boarded the next flight home without notifying Amy. This lack of communication proved fortunate, as it led to an unexpected discovery. I arrived home at around 5:20 p.m., before Amy got off work. Considering that I had to cook dinner, I chose to take Amy out to dinner with the kids, because I heard the garage door opener in my home office alerting me to Amy's return. As I saved my work and exited the computer program, she was walking in the door. When I opened the office door, I heard Amy say, "Stop," followed by a man's voice saying, "You really don't want me to stop?" We don't even have to wait in the bedroom. I want you to lie behind the sofa. You're so horny. Hal. Amy answers, yes. You like the idea. The sofa is a good idea. Should I take off my underwear or leave them on? Amy asks, take them off, he instructs, recalling the discomfort of the last time, and I cringe as the conversation temporarily stops. Then Amy's satisfied voice fills the room, mingled with her familiar moans, which makes me sad to hear. I pick up my phone, set it to camera mode, and walk towards the living room. I already know. Who will I find there? Amy's work supervisor? How is he involved? I had met him and his wife at various company parties, such as Christmas parties and picnics. Amy didn't know I had come home. Due to the recall, I had left my car at the dealer and taken a taxi from the airport so they wouldn't expect me. I managed to take 5 clear pictures of them before they noticed me, and 3 more when they hurriedly parted. I took out my phone and walked towards him. He read my intentions in my face, and unfortunately I did not block his way to the door. Fortunately, he had not yet completely undressed, but had only unzipped his trousers, and then began to have sex with Amy. This enabled him to quickly turn around and rush for the door before I could catch up with him. I probably would have caught up, but as I passed Amy, she stuck out her foot, causing me to trip. When I recovered, he had already left the house, ignoring Amy. I went to the kitchen, took the phone book from its fixed position, looked up Harold Batram and called. Amy came into the kitchen and questioned me about calling Janet Batram. I replied, nothing, just wanted to tell her some good news. Amy quickly unplugged the phone and persuaded me, don't do it, it will only cause more trouble. I retorted, don't you think we're already in trouble, especially between Hal and Janet? It's fine for Hal to mess with my life, but I have to be careful with him. We shouldn't hurt innocent Janet, Amy argued. I disagreed, and I responded, she married a cheating idiot, and if she chooses to accept that, then from now on she should know that I intend to make his life a living hell. I'll tell Janet first, and if she wants to see the pictures, I'll show them to her. Then I'll consult a lawyer to see if I can sue him at work. I'm sure your company's policy manual mentions the relationship between superiors and subordinates. Finally, I will find him and make him eat his words. Amy warned you against taking these measures, which will cost you dearly. I asked her why, and she replied, you tell Janet to leave him, and then I'll throw you out and bring him to our house, with me and our children. If you sue our company, both Hal and I will lose our jobs, and without a job, I will make sure you pay huge alimony and child support, and if you resort to violence against him, you will go to prison for assault. The best thing to do is to forget about it and focus on our lives. Are you serious? Are you going to continue after I found out about this? I retorted, Amy retorted, why has my relationship with Hal not had a negative impact on us? We get along well together. I have always been faithful to you. Our relationship is strong, and I truly love you. How can you sleep with him and then claim to love me? I doubt that. It seems to me that Hal only fulfills my physical needs. He's in great shape and a great lover, but that's all. When I found out you were cheating and heard you criticize my performance, I was silent. I never said you were bad in bed. Amy responds, then why cheat? I demand Amy clarify that I have not been unfaithful to Hal since we got married. You know what I mean. You're an amazing man, husband and father, great in bed, but it's incredible how you can offer something different. It's enlightening to know that I'm good at being a husband and father, but just satisfactory in the bedroom. I said sarcastically, to which Amy responded quickly, I'm not trying to imply that our sex life is great and there's nothing lacking on your side, but Hal offers something different that I crave. Oh really? I asked, and what is that? Amy admitted that Hallie was exceptionally gifted and that this provided a different experience. I retorted, arguing that size shouldn't be an issue and that we'd always had a good life until now, and that if you were willing to seek out this experience elsewhere, I would be fine with it. We could continue as before occasionally, or it wouldn't hurt us, we'd been doing it like this for years, and we'd be fine. I shook my head incredulously and said, Amy, you really are different, but I'm curious, when you say this has been going on for many years, how many years exactly? How did it all start? Amy admitted that it all started in college when we were taking a break and I wanted to explore other relationships. One of the first men I dated was exceptionally gifted, which seemed exciting. Larger men would share their experiences, and this guy shared my enthusiastic response with others. I had relationships with 5 of them, enjoyed what they had to offer, and then realized I wanted to be with you. This begs two questions. I said, first, if size is so important to you, why didn't you marry one of them, because they are both selfish. Amy explained that they believed size was all that mattered and expected women to be grateful for the experience. I wanted more than just physical satisfaction, and I left them because I loved you. The second question was, after spending almost 6 weeks with a man of such a large stature, why did you insist on waiting until marriage to have physical relations? Amy replied, but after I dated the man, I lost interest in men as a whole. I was not interested in having physical relations, and it wasn't fair to you, but that was what I was thinking at the time. Everything was going well until the company Christmas party, which you missed because you were on a business trip to Seattle. If I remember correctly, I drank a lot that day and was in a mischievous mood. As he danced under the mistletoe and kissed me, I felt his huge body pressed against my leg. I guided Mae West and teased, "Do you have change in your pocket, or are you just seeing me?" Hal also admitted ecstatically that it must be bigger than a roll of coins. Laughing, I replied that they all said that. He confidently claimed that he could prove it, which I was very flattered by. I challenged him to do so, and he did. We spent the next 2 nights together, and we continued our passionate encounters until he met Janet and married her. Although we still flirted, our relationship Jeanette became pregnant again and began to refuse intimacy with him. Since then, we have never stopped. It seems that it has not had a negative effect on us. Amy insisted that I pick up the kids from my sister's house so that you could let your sister cover for you while you cheated on me behind my back. I asked Amy, and she clarified that no, she thought I was working overtime. I asked her to watch the kids after school, but they went straight to her house, and now I have to pick them up after I get back. I will prove that nothing has changed. Amy said as she walked towards her car, staring at me incredulously. I realized that her actions had not harmed our relationship, only because I hadn't thought to prove that nothing had changed. I thought she wanted me to accept her, and after her encounter with Halno, I didn't have a chance. I reconnected the phone and called Janet. She was upset about what I had shared and wanted to see the photos I had taken. We arranged to have lunch together the next day. Janet warned me not to let Amy know that I had called, worrying that she would inform him until I had solid evidence, and then I would face him. I decided upstairs that I would start moving my things into the guest room while hanging up my suit. A disturbing thought suddenly occurred to me. Amy had said that he could move in here and live with me and our children, implying that the children were hers. How had I not noticed that at the time, but now it seemed possible. Recalling Amy's admission about her relationship with Hal, I realized that my trip to Seattle had taken place about a year before she announced she was pregnant with Brian's child. If that was true, could Hal be the father of my child? If it was true, they would both face my anger. Amy returned with the kids just as I finished packing. She found me in the guest room and asked what I was doing. I replied that we needed to keep our distance. She seemed to be unable to understand why I was reminding her, and I said that nothing had changed. Have you forgotten what I saw 2 hours ago? Do you expect me to eat Hal's leftovers? Amy retorted that you never cared before. Fine, I'll go take a shower first, I replied. You don't get it. I don't want to be involved with you, you're overreacting, Rob. I don't love you the way I love you. I have physical contact with Hal, but I only have sex with you. Amy insists, I retorted, that's not what you said when you suggested I leave and let Hal move in. There wasn't much love in your threats during the divorce talks. Amy explains, I didn't mean it like that, I just wanted you to stop before you called Janet. I replied, Amy, I did think about it, the reason I moved here. We are both adults, Amy, we can discuss this, but I need space, she pleaded. Nothing has changed, I still love you, just not enough to stop you cheating. I left to be with the kids, help them with their homework, play with them until bedtime. Later I moved into the new room, I heard the shower, I thought back to Amy's words, you never used to care before. When I was about to fall asleep, Amy walked into the room and tried to hug me. I suddenly sat up and pushed her away so hard that she fell off the bed. I don't want anything to do with you. Don't you understand? Leave me alone, Amy. Rob. I love you. We can work things out, Amy pleaded. I replied firmly, no way. Amy, there's no chance. She stood there, left the room, and I tried to sleep, but tossed and turned all night, only dozing off in the morning. Amy prepared breakfast, but I ignored her, grabbed the car keys, went to a local restaurant for breakfast, and then went to work at 10 o'clock. I called Mike Cooper, a trusted lawyer and friend, and described my situation in detail, asking to discuss divorce. He agreed to meet at the Buzz Bar at 5:30. I connected my phone to the computer, printed 3 sets of photos of Amy and Bartram and put them in envelopes. Around noon, I arrived at Mario's house and found Janet there to greet me. I kissed her cheek and said I hoped our meeting was under better circumstances. After some casual conversation and ordering food, I recounted what had happened the previous day. I handed her the envelope containing the photos, and she calmly leafed through them, her composure surprising me. She put the photos back in the envelope and asked me if I wanted a divorce. I replied that I had seen for myself that things could not be salvaged, and Janet said that I might do the same thing. This was not his first infidelity, and considering his build, I forgave him once but warned him that it would be the last time. You may not get the chance to throw him out. I will find him, and when I do, I won't let him off lightly. She suggested putting him in a hospital and moving his things there. If you do catch him, give him a few kicks for me. I agreed and we left. My discussions with Mike confirmed my suspicions. In our state, under the fault system, assets would not be divided equally. Amy would get custody and I would be responsible for child support because our incomes were similar. I will not be liable for alimony or so-called separate maintenance. Mike suggests a DNA test and hands me 2 sets of photos. I demand legal action against Bartram for emotional alienation and against their workplace for ignoring the policy forbidding relationships between supervisors and subordinates, which could jeopardize Amy's job and increase your financial obligations. Mike warns me. I know Mike is still insisting. I insist we discuss more topics, and he advises not to leave the house and let Amy control the children. He suggested trying to coexist peacefully until the divorce proceedings were over and the court issued guidelines, leaving it up to the court to decide who goes and who stays, but bearing in mind that the courts here usually favor the wife, especially when it comes to the children. The future could be tough. Mike reminded me that Amy wasn't happy when I got home, and you had to tell Janet, didn't you? We could have worked it out, but you dragged her into it. She complained that because of you, she had thrown him out. I replied, not because of me, Amy, but because of what you two did. I'm sorry she kicked him out, it'll only make it harder to find him. When I find him, I promise his prize will be temporarily unavailable. That night, when the family was asleep, I got up at 3 a.m. and swabbed the kids' cheeks. I left the samples at the nearby lab, then went to work and paid extra for an expedited test. Amy's words echoed in my head, except I remembered I warned you. Rob was on to me. I was at the bank when it opened at 9. I emptied all our safety deposit boxes and went to another bank down the street and opened an account in my name. I knew I'd have to explain this at the divorce, but it would ensure I could pay the mortgage and take care of the kids when they returned to school. I had another idea. I canceled all our joint credit cards to prevent Amy from overdrawing the cash balance. This proactive approach was crucial. That night when I got home, a man handed me an envelope and said, "Someone has filed a lawsuit against you. According to a temporary restraining order, you must move at least 500 feet from this house." The restraining order in the envelope confirmed that I could not come within 500 feet of the house, including Amy and the kids. Amy's lawyer moved quickly, unlike Mike, but neither of us anticipated the urgency. I looked up and saw Amy giggling in the house. I backed the car around the corner to call Mike and give him the latest. I asked him how I could get my belongings back, and he said he had contacts at the police station and promised to check and call me back. While we were talking, I asked him to change the grounds for divorce from irreconcilable differences to infidelity and to sue Bartram and Emick. Let's make them pay. Mike assured me that he would call me back within 15 minutes and said that 2 deputy sheriffs would arrive within the next 30 minutes to help me enter the house, but that I would only be able to retrieve my clothes and toiletries until further arrangements were made in court. 20 minutes later, 2 patrol cars arrived at the house. I started the car and parked behind them. The deputies introduced themselves and advised me to wait for their signal before approaching. They then walked to the house and rang the doorbell. Amy answered and, after a brief exchange, the deputies signaled for me to come over. They reminded me that I could only take my clothes and toiletries, and then escorted me into the house. On the way to the stairs, I glanced into the kitchen to see the children. They weren't there, but Hal was sitting there, holding the beer I bought, and despite my anger, I resisted the urge to confront him with their gifts. As we went upstairs, Amy stood in the doorway watching me pack. Yielding to a childish impulse, I didn't look at her and said, "You screwed up this time, Amy." Screwed up, Amy. I spent the whole day at the office thinking about our relationship and ultimately concluded that we can't solve our problems. After all, you did profess your love for me, some love, Amy, I muttered to myself, emotional abuse, restraining orders, our chances are gone forever, Amy, I reflected, once I'm gone, we were close to sealing the deal, but you screwed it up, drinking my beer in the kitchen is how you seal the deal. I closed my suitcase, turned around and left the house the next day. Amy called me and, considering what you said last night, I wanted to discuss the things she had raised, but it was impossible. Amy, your actions yesterday, combined with letting me see you appear in a house you had forbidden me to enter, have ended our relationship and also made me lose any hope in you. Also, I cannot meet and talk with you. Remember the 500-ton limit? Goodbye, Amy. 2 days later, I returned to the house with 2 court-appointed monitors to supervise the removal of my belongings. Amy insisted on talking to me, but I refused until I had loaded the last item into the U-shaped cart in the bedroom. She pleaded with me that if I communicated, we could work things out. I waved her over and pointed to the counter in the master bathroom, where her expression suddenly grew solemn. There were men's toiletries there that didn't belong to me. Goodbye, Amy. You know this is your fault and it could have been avoided. Things moved quickly after that. Amy received legal papers at work accusing her of infidelity. Hal also faced litigation at work for causing the breakdown of our marriage. In addition, their employer was also taken to court for failing to enforce guidelines prohibiting relationships between superiors and subordinates. 3 days later, Hal and Amy were both out of a job. Amy's boss Hal took the brunt of the firing, but Amy contested the dismissal, claiming that Hal had threatened her with job loss if she disobeyed him. The company didn't believe her and upheld the dismissal. Amy then sued them for wrongful dismissal. Amy was later. We attended the hearing and asked for an extension of the temporary restraining order, but the judge rejected the request and scolded Amy's lawyer for submitting the application a week later. We attended the first divorce hearing. Mike reminded me that the odds were not in our favor, and they would likely award Amy temporary custody of the children and exclusive use of the house until the divorce terms were finalized. You will still need to pay the mortgage and utilities, and you may face temporary alimony and child support. Her lawyer is also trying to recover the money you withdrew from the account, and I hope the judge can resolve that. I handed him an envelope and told him it could affect child support. Mike responded, "Damn it, Bob, I'm really sorry. Do you know who the child's biological father is? I bet Amy is him. Although this won't affect this preliminary hearing, because Child Protective Services will verify the documents. But it will definitely affect the final divorce settlement. Can I speak? Choose your words wisely." He suggested that the hearing went about as Mike had predicted. Amy got the house and temporary custody of the children, as well as temporary alimony. I was ordered to reimburse Amy half of the amount of the checks and savings, but there were a few missing deposit slips that I didn't raise. Amy's lawyer demanded that I pay his fees, but Mike intervened. This was not your typical divorce case, where my client was being sued, and his wife was here to respond that she was the one who had filed the lawsuit against my client and that she should bear her own legal fees. The judge ruled in our favor on this issue, and I couldn't help laughing when I saw that he had determined the amount of child support based on the recommendation of the Child Protection Service. Mike objected and provided a DNA test to prove that I was not the biological father of the child. I was told that I should pay temporary child support until the Child Protection Service verifies the accuracy of the documents. Any maintenance I pay will be taken from my wife's. I kept an eye on Amy, and when Mike proposed a paternity test for the child, she didn't show any surprise, because she always knew about the problems in the house. The judge asked me if I understood the court order. I got the ruling, but not the reasons. Why was custody of the children granted to my adulterous wife? Is it good for them to live with a woman who moved in with her lover on the day of the divorce? What kind of example does that set? We hadn't even been separated for 6 weeks when she slept with another man. Besides, why should I maintain a home for the man my wife cheated with? The judge simply instructed the CPS to investigate my claim and get back to me within 10 days. As we left the courtroom, Amy approached me and said, "How could you do this to your children? They're not my children." Amy, and your reaction to Mike's mention of the DNA test said it all. You weren't surprised. You always knew it was just the debt I owed you. Of course, in any case, just make sure I get the money tomorrow. She left, not knowing that she would soon smell money. I thought I could stall for a few weeks before facing a potential contempt of court suit, and even then, I could probably stall for another week or two. The day after the hearing, Mike called to tell me that Amy's former employer had offered a settlement, which was a bit low, but I was sure we could negotiate a better deal. Here you go, because you know these things better. To be honest, I initially sued them mainly to get back at Amy and Bartram. I'm glad they lost their jobs. Besides, we shouldn't expect too much from Bartram, especially now that he's unemployed. No matter how hard he tries, he'll probably spend his income on child support and alimony for his ex-wife. Keep putting pressure on him to bear the legal costs. If we win, we can be sure to get an unfavorable judgment against him, which will constantly remind him of his actions. Mike's comment about the possible payment of alimony reminded me that I hadn't been in touch with Janet recently. I contacted her to check on her situation, and it wasn't good. Hal had lost his job and couldn't afford to pay the court-ordered alimony, and it was tough. Fortunately, I had withdrawn funds from our account before I kicked him out. I hate to say it, but it could have been worse. It turns out that both my children are Hal's biological children, and once my divorce is final, or maybe not, because they live together, I don't know how the case is going with Hal's former employer. I have no reason to sue them, why would I? I clarified the situation and she was grateful, saying she would consult her lawyer. I added that if you need any help, please let me know. I hope you're not implying what I think you're implying. What would that be? Just because Amy did something doesn't mean I wouldn't do the same thing to you out of revenge. Do the same thing to you. That's a horrible assumption. I'm sorry to have bothered you. Before we ended the call, she said something that upset me and made me feel bad all day. After work, I couldn't wait to go see Hal, because he was unemployed, and I assumed he was looking for work. The next morning at 6 a.m., I parked my car in the street not far from my house. At 7:20, when the children were going to school, and at 8 o'clock, Hal's Chevrolet Blazer pulled out of my garage and drove down the street. I followed him to a parking lot in the city center and parked a few spaces away from him. When he reached my car, I crouched down and stood between him and the elevator. He tried to escape, but I caught him, turned him around, and pushed him against a concrete pillar. Then I physically assaulted him, ending with 6 hard kicks to his groin. The next day, I left him on the ground, writhing in pain. 2 policemen came to my workplace and arrested me for assault and battery. I spent the night in jail and appeared in court the next day. After hearing the charges, I pleaded not guilty. The judge asked, "Are you sure you want to plead not guilty?" Mr. Bartram was very sure. "You assaulted him." "I did have a confrontation with him, but I don't consider it assault." "What do you consider it then?" "Justice?" "I don't understand your point." "He has been having an affair with my wife for years and fathered 2 children. He and my soon-to-be ex-wife convinced me that the children were mine. He has to face the consequences." "That may be true, but infidelity is not illegal in this state, which is why I'm dealing with it personally. I'm not interested in the law. The legal system is the same system you praise and it comes to cases like mine. If the law is not fair to me, then I will have to take matters into my own hands." "You did break the law, and you admit it." "No, I didn't. I admit that I'm seeking the justice I deserve. I would be more than willing to present my case to a jury, and you may be willing to. I will not allow the resources of this court to be wasted on this trial. You openly admitted to kicking him in the groin. And therefore I must find you guilty and sentence you to 6 months in the Fairmont County Jail." "Thank you. I'm sorry, but you have actually helped me find justice. As for my wife, she will not receive any alimony or child support for those 6 months. I will not pay the mortgage, and since she is unemployed, she will not be able to pay the mortgage. The house will be foreclosed, leaving her and her lover homeless. My prison sentence also meant I would lose my job, so when I got out, she wouldn't get any money from me, so thank you for being willing to sacrifice your home equity." "What equity did we have to get a second mortgage for?" "To sell it for the central air conditioner wouldn't generate much of a return, maybe a few $1,000s after costs, which we would split. I'd rather she lose that too, I wouldn't get a penny. In any case, when I got out of prison, I would owe 6 months of alimony. I was sure the legal system would redistribute any earnings to pay off that debt, but the judge just shook his head. I served 4 months in the county jail, and Mike visited me every week. On his 3rd visit, he mentioned a settlement offer from Amy's former employer. I told him to accept it, cash the check immediately, and keep the money away from Amy. At the end of the 1st month, a surprise occurred. Amy appeared in the prison to see me. They only allow approved visitors. You provide a list of acceptable visitors. If someone not on the list wants to visit Amy, although she is not on my list, I am curious and agree. Through the partition, Amy sat in the cubicle opposite me, smiling and saying, "Oranges are the same color as you. I can only wear these here." "What do you need, Amy?" "I need you to get me some money. The mortgage and utilities are due and I can't find a job. If your lover had just caused trouble instead of pressing charges, I wouldn't be here and your financial situation wouldn't be so bad. He's the reason I'm here, so leave your money problems to him. When it comes to supporting the children, it's his responsibility. He should take care of them." "How can you say that?" "Yes, he is related to the children by blood, but you are the father they have known since birth. They don't know anything else. They only know that he lives in our house and that you are still married to me. I would say that you are their biological father. Rob, you have been there for them from the beginning, loving them unconditionally, until you found out about me and Hal. You can't turn that love off for them. Rob, they are innocent in this. If you are angry, take it out on me, not them. Amy's problem is that if I give you money for food, it will not only feed the kids, it will also feed you and Bartle. I can't hurt you as much as I hurt Bartle, but it's hard for me to watch you both struggle. You don't worry that we'll lose the house without your help, do you? You mean the house you threw me out of, the one you live in with your lover, because Bartleby is the man of the house now and he should contribute his fair share. You need to look harder for work, Amy, and push Bartleby to do the same. He has a hard time finding work, and Janet takes most of whatever he earns, but at least he still has that great tool you're so obsessed with, so it's not all bad for you. Rob, he hasn't been so tough since you confronted him. Amy, I'm sorry I messed up your life. You know what they say about hard lives." I got up and left. My sister Megan was my only regular visitor, and she came to see me once a week. About 3 weeks after Amy died, Megan mentioned that Amy had contacted her and asked her to persuade me to give her some money. Amy claimed she would only spend it on the children. Rob, I don't want to see the children get into trouble. Megan suggested that I fight for full custody, and my idea was to prove that she could not take proper care of them, especially since she lived with her biological father, Bartrames, and if they could not even provide food, the court might consider my case. I responded that I wanted custody despite their biological father, Bartrames, showing that I cared for them. Helping Amy would undermine my goal, and I didn't trust her because she had deceived me with her smile for more than 6 years. I couldn't believe a word she said. "Would you be upset if I helped them?" "I'm stuck in prison, Megan. I can't stop you from doing what you think is right." I told her that Megan did help them, but not financially. She bought clothes for the children and occasionally gave them some groceries. I learned that Amy had found a decent job, but things at home were not going well. Bartram had given up looking for work because he felt that the positions available were beneath his abilities or did not pay enough. Megan had noticed that Bartram and Amy often argued at home because he was lazy. I felt some relief when I heard this. In the 3rd month, I was surprised by a visit from Janet, as she was not on the list of visitors I had approved. They asked if I wanted to see her. Out of curiosity, I agreed. Recalling our last conversation, I was curious about the reason for her visit. Sitting across from her, she said, "Orange is not your color." "I've heard that before. Why are you here?" I asked. She replied, "Because of guilt." I asked, "Why guilt?" She answered, "Because you were mean to me." Janet admitted, "When was that?" I asked, "When was the last time we spoke on the phone?" I was upset and disappointed in men, but that wasn't an excuse. "I'm sorry," Janet clarified. "Okay, that did make me sad, but it's okay, and I want to thank you for sharing. I gave you something to thank me for." Janet looked confused. "You didn't realize it, but you did. A friend from college works as a nurse in our doctor's office. Hal goes there. Martha told me that Hal has been discussing erectile problems with Dr. Marlin. It seems his ability to perform has been affected, which is satisfactory. Because of what he did to me. You may find it interesting that your wife did not benefit from his infidelity either." I revealed that Janet seemed taken aback, and yes, I said with certainty. We continued talking until she left, asking me to call her after I got out. I served 4 months in the county jail, but was released early due to overcrowding. I served 2/3 of my sentence and was deemed non-threatening, and despite the assault charges against me, I qualified for early release. Mike picked me up after my release. He drove me to a motel where I paid weekly rates and booked a room while I looked for an apartment. Mike updated me on the latest developments. Amy wasn't opposed to the divorce, but she was fighting for custody, alimony and even child support. I didn't think she had a chance, but since you were out, I would request a hearing, and then it would be a matter of waiting for the outcome. Mike said, "What are you going to do with the settlement check from Amy's employer?" "I will keep it safe until the divorce is final and Amy can't get it." I replied that now that you are free, you may be subpoenaed for the money you owe Amy. "Don't worry, I will say that I was unable to pay her while I was incarcerated. They may argue that I could have made arrangements or told her which bank I had an account with. There is no way she can find all the money because the courts here are more inclined to women, which may work in her favor." Mike pointed out that after all the deception and betrayal, would not trust her not to take the opportunity if she could. The next morning, I went to my workplace and asked Frank if there were any job openings. He told me to go to work and not bother him with stupid questions. That afternoon, I called Amy to arrange a visit with the children. She laughed it off, saying that you can see the kids once I see the money. I ended the call and contacted Child Protective Services, explaining Amy's reasons for denying me access to the children. I was told that she had the right to refuse my access. "Your documents confirm that you are not the children's biological parent, that she has the rights of the mother, and that court approval is required for access. Therefore, you must raise the issue of child support with the court in order to revoke the order. Your response suggests that I should not expect to be granted custody." I indicated that I could not disclose the court's advice. After expressing her gratitude, she said that I should call Amy and plan to pick up the children for the visit at 7 p.m. and bring the money. "I will not let you be alone with them." She retorted. I took $500, put it in an envelope, and arrived on time. Amy opened the door, saw the money, moved aside, and my heart sank. Seeing Bartram in the living room, he quickly left, reflecting my shock. Brian and Susan stared at me from the couch. I wanted a happy reunion, but Susan's words changed everything. "Why did you hurt our father?" "Mom said that Bartram really is our biological father." Amy giggled, confirming her influence. I was towards the door, Amy giggled and called for me to hurry back, snatching the envelope. I shouted, "Go to hell, you liar." Things moved quickly. I was taken to court and ordered to pay Amy the initial court-ordered amount, plus back child support. I told the judge I'd rather die than give money to a liar. He warned me to comply or face contempt of court charges. I retorted that was the first thing he'd said correctly. Then he sentenced me to $500 or 30 days, and I chose the latter. On the 29th day, I returned to court, and the judge asked me if I had changed my position. I would not pay child support for children that even the court admitted were not mine. CPS confirmed this. I had no problem with child support, but I would not pay the mortgage while my ex-wife harbored her lover and kicked him out. I would continue to make payments. You claim that CPS admitted that you are not the father of the children. The judge questioned. Yes, they do. I will adjourn this hearing to verify your CLA claim with CPS. He announced the adjournment. I caught Amy's expression as she realized that the child support decision might go in my favor. She was angry because she had expected to beat me again the next day. I returned to court, and the CPS report confirmed that I was not the child's father. Hal lived with Amy, so the judge cancelled the child support and reduced Amy's alimony by 1/3. Voluntarily, I still have to pay the arrears and the house costs. The judge's decision surprised everyone, especially Amy, because the judge ruled that since Miss Luddy had boundaries, she would be responsible for the utility bills and home insurance until I was ready to reject the ruling and wait another 30 days. However, I chose to obey. My reasoning was a bit twisted. Amy would be upset with the judge's decision, but seeing me back in jail might cheer her up. I felt the need to deny her this satisfaction, and she probably felt some joy at the fact that I had paid less than she had expected, plus the fact that I was not paying child support, and the fact that my smile at her would upset her. The judge demanded that I pay within 48 hours or he would issue a warrant for my arrest. As I left, the smile I gave Amy seemed to anger her, which made for a pleasant day in jail. I was taken out of jail and then to a restaurant for a big meal. After that, I went to find my sisters and retrieve the things she had kept from the motel during my incarceration. We talked for a while, and I mentioned the effect Amy had on the kids. Megan advised not to let it get to me, that they were just kids and because you weren't around, Amy was their only influence. Toddlers are easily influenced, and you get the chance to talk to them, but that moment never comes. At the final court hearing, I was taken aback. Amy was granted full custody, and according to the CPS report, I was not even allowed to visit. Both the mother and the biological father believed that I would disrupt the children's lives, as the biological father planned to marry Amy and start a family. The judge felt that it would be best for the children to have no contact with me. The judge also ruled that I could continue to live in the house until the children turned 18, after which it would be sold and the proceeds split equally between us. If Amy married before then, the house could be sold immediately, but I would continue to pay reduced maintenance for a period of 3 years or until Amy remarried, whichever came first. I left the courtroom in a rage, and as I walked past Amy, she mocked me and gave me the finger. I brooded for about a week, then exploded and started planning. I admit my judgment was clouded, but I had been wronged by Amy so many times that I lost control. I terminated the home insurance and kept a close eye on the house, waiting for the right moment. A few days after canceling the insurance, Amy called the mortgage company and they told me you canceled the insurance. I did cancel it, you have put me in a financial bind and I am considering cutting costs. I can get the same insurance at a better price. The mortgage company mentioned Allstate Insurance, and they said we needed to insure the house within 5 days or they would insure it themselves and charge a fee. The person I spoke to suggested we insure it because their provider was expensive. I would call after I got my chance. Soon after the kids left for school, Amy left for work. At 8:30, Bartram drove off in his Blazer. I used the remote to open the garage door, and to my surprise, it opened. I drove in, got out 2 5-gallon gas cans from the trunk, and after thoroughly soaking the house, I went inside. I backed out and set the house on fire from there. I drove to the airport, parked in the long-term parking lot, and flew to Panama City, where I spent a month soaking up the sun and hanging out with the ladies, some of whom left a lasting impression on me on my last day in Panama City. I rented a safe deposit box at the bank and paid for 10 years in advance. Before leaving for Florida, I emptied all my accounts and hid the cash in the safe deposit box. I figured I might face jail time for my actions, but I didn't care. I left Amy to face the consequences alone. Without insurance to cover the fire damage, she will be left with nothing. She may come after me for this, but whether I am locked up or not, she will never find me, and even if I get out, she will hardly get a penny. Back in town, I stopped by the store to pick up my personal belongings and to apologize to Frank for getting him into trouble. He understood, as he had been through a difficult divorce himself. Then he asked me if I had gotten rid of the system and was ready to go back to work. I had to say no and explain that I could have gone to jail. When he asked me why, he laughed and said he wished he had the courage to do something similar to his ex-wife. I contacted Mike and invited him to lunch in Mali. As he sat down, he warned, "You really pissed off everyone this time. Everyone is gunning for you. You'd better stay put. The judge thinks your actions contempt of court, because he ordered you to maintain the house. The prosecutor has a long list of charges against you, ranging from arson to destruction of property, and Amy, she wants you to be hung and flogged every day, but you may take comfort in the fact that Amy has lost her ability to keep Bartram under the roof." How bad is it? How can they pin arson on me? It was my house. I didn't commit insurance fraud. In fact, I canceled the insurance to prevent any claims. The mortgage company may be upset about losing their collateral, but I'm still carrying the loan, and I even paid this month's payment last week. As long as I keep making payments, they can't touch me. It's my property, and I have the right to do what I want with it. Maybe that's the way it seems to you, but I can assure you that the court won't see it that way. After a month of legal back and forth, he was right. I was with Al and behaved well. After serving 3 years, I would be eligible for parole. I refused. I didn't want to subject myself to a legal system that I came to loathe and that was full of rules and restrictions. In the end, I served 2.5 years in prison. My sister Mike, Frank and even Frank's wife visited regularly. Frank always encouraged me to visit him after my release, and Janet came to visit a few times and insisted that I call her when I got out. While in prison, I also filed for bankruptcy and successfully discharged all my debts except the one I owed the IRS. They wouldn't let me write off the home interest on my tax return, even though the house no longer existed. Even from behind bars, the IRS demanded that I file the tax returns I owed and imposed penalties for non-compliance. Megan and I are sitting at Budweiser Bar, sipping cold Budweisers, and she asks me about my plans. I'll tell Franken to go back to work, find an apartment, and try to rebuild some sort of social life. Or will you go see the kids? I doubt it. Amy has brainwashed them. Seeing the kids is the same as seeing Amy, and my first reaction is to strangle her. She doesn't want to see you either. She's still angry at you for ruining everything she had, but she's changed over the years. She truly regrets how things turned out. She admits she loves you. Her affair was purely physical. She never wanted you to find out. She's willing to let you have a relationship with Brian and Susan. She's being really generous, especially after telling them I'm not their real father. Give her some time, man. Everything she's doing is out of spite. The kids are caught in the middle. They spend the weekends with me, and believe me, they miss you. You should reconnect with them. If you can arrange to pick them up at your house, I can't face Amy. We can try to reconnect. I visited Frank, who said I could go back to work when I was ready. I asked for a week to adjust to my new freedom. I flew to Panama City, withdrew my money from the safe deposit box, and returned home. I paid off RS debt, found an apartment, called Janet and asked her out to dinner. I reconnected with the kids and started seeing them every other weekend. Janet and I went on a few dates, but it became clear that we were better off as friends. I met a new girlfriend and we're moving towards marriage. She must be great, willing to take on a challenge with me, my kids and me. Yes, I now have custody of the kids. Amy remarried, but her new marriage hit a snag when her husband found out she cheated on him. Unlike me, he didn't take a picture, but picked up a weapon and tragically ended both their lives. Since there is no death penalty in our state, he was sentenced to 20 years to life. I send him a box of cigarettes every month with a thank you card that doesn't include a picture of Amy. I applied to the court for custody and now have it. The kids live with me. I think that makes sense.